So just want to first express my gratitude to you and thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Thank you, Abby. I just want to say before we begin the questioning that I'm an immigrant, I'm Latino, I'm a visual storyteller, and I'm very proud to be able to show true family value films of a Latino queer family because we don't see enough of them. And I totally commend Matt and Patrice and the team here that was willing to invite us and to bring this film to a wider audience. And also I feel like right now that you're like a family, raising Zoey family, and I'm just gonna announce something that I didn't tell Abby before because I didn't wanna make her cry, but the little dog in the film, Zoey's dog, passed away today. And yeah, Dante, actually. And so the family is very, sad because of that, and so am I, and so is my producer, John. And I just think that's one of the things that we do with storytelling, that we capture a moment in time that will live forever in celluloid, but people's lives are, people pass, and they leave an indelible feeling in your lives. And little Dante, he was the first person that greeted me when I went into that house, and he's always been there. And we just saw him last Thursday. We had no idea that his time was up, and I know the family is very sad about that event. And it's like a family member, and they're grieving right now. So I'm grieving with them.
Moment of silence for little Dante.
I just had to share that,
So I guess I'll start with the first question. And I'm gonna, a lot of these questions are gonna start with like, why is this so impactful? Because like I feel like this film really, like I said, sheds light to specific issues that, trans members within, families go through, and what families go through when they have a trans kid or a trans family member, right? So the first question is, why is the mission of the film so important in our political climate today?
Well, I started shooting the film 2.5 years ago. I premiered last July at Outfest in LA, and I thought, like I'm sure a lot of people here in the audience, that we were going to have a different outcome in November. So it was going to be a film that was going to be celebrating this queer Latino family, and it was going to have a healthy run, and we're going to have a lot of happy moments and memories, and it didn't happen, And suddenly I had so many people calling me that they wanted to show the film. I've been showing a lot of campuses in Europe, in South America, and it's because now this become a militant film, a film that calls you to act upon whatever that's going on in your community that is unjust, that it goes against your core humane beliefs. And I think it really is a wake up to the parents and to the community at large to say, you have to stand up for your kids' rights. You have to stand up for the youth in your family and your community. And I think Ophelia is one of the examples to follow, because without her and Letty, the older sister, Zoey wouldn't be in the place she's right now as a confident young woman. And we need a lot more of that, I think, in America right now.
Yes, please. And I think going off of that, what is the impact of possibly showing this film to educators from all grades? Because as we see in the film, Zoey is facing so much discrimination within the school system, and how the school system hasn't basically shown support for trans students, and especially right now since, under this current administration, the federal law was removed to protect transgender students within the school education system. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, Zoe is lucky, and the kids who grew up in California are lucky. We do have the law, like James mentions in the film, that's been in the books for a long time. But most parents, most families, especially in our communities, do not know about their rights. So one of the things that's come out of the film is that there being a lot of more opportunities for Zoe and Ophelia to talk about the rights the kids have in school,
Right.
to express themselves as who they truly are. And I think, unfortunately, this is not the case in a lot of states, as you well know. But it's something that I think, for instance, AB 1266,
Right.
which is something that has to do, it's an ordinance to allow Zoe to use the bathroom that conforms with her gender identity. It's a law that's being passed here in California only, and in a lot of places, Texas, North Carolina,
Right.
the reverse has happened, and I'm sure there's a lot of ordinances. I know even before November, there were almost, I think, 31 or 41 ordinances that had to do specifically about the bathroom situation. And that's very distressing to the family, to Zoe, because she's afraid of going, for instance, to go with the film to another state that is not as supportive. And I think I feel like I have to bring those films out to those communities, to
Right.
those schools. And if anybody in the audience or somebody wants to do that, I think the film is family friendly enough and child friendly enough that it can at least begin to start a conversation, because that is something that is very scary to kids. I mean, they're just coming out. I mean, we see them even younger, 6, 5. We had screenings, we had 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and they're already being discriminated and, bullied and all of that, and they don't even know why,
Right.
And I think parents also have to be educated and do research, like Ophelia mentions in the film.
And that's why this is so critical, because once you introduce it to the school system, this is a way for students to be, for parents to be able to get some access in terms of, some knowledge about how to be a supportive parent to a trans child, right? So I just wanted to comment on that and how this film really sheds light on the specific things, right? Like, how did Ophelia navigate with Zoe about accessing hormone replacement therapy, right? And what it meant financially and healthcare and stuff like that. So definitely this is something that is critical and should be shown in all schools from all grades.
Thank you.
So the next question is, your earlier films focused on trans activists in Peru and the US. What made you turn towards the experience of a trans teenager?
Like you just mentioned, I'm
Right.
originally from Peru. I came here when I was 13. And I always look back into, even though I've been here over 40 years, I always look back into what's going on in my country. And years ago, I think it was maybe about 10 years ago, I went back to Peru, and I just saw something that I didn't like, which it was my gay friends were, disrespecting the trans community, but they didn't want to really be out in public about it. It was only in like private discourse, and I wanted to make a film about what was that, because I knew I knew the term, internalized homophobia.
Right.
They did not. They just thought that they were like, the worst example of the community, and because they were always out there, dealing in sex work or being outrageous and flamboyant, and so I went out to make a film about that internalized homophobia. Obviously, nobody wanted to talk to me about it on camera. But I did find a group of trans activists who said, yes, we're eager to tell you our story. And that was the beginning of my career as a documentary filmmaker, my first film. And I'm very proud of it, because I've seen the growth of those trans activists. Now, I just went to Peru 2 months ago to show Raising Zoey. They all came out to my screening.
Wow.
They are running their own nonprofits. They all got back together with their families. They have boyfriends and girlfriends, and they have really strived. Well, not all of them, but some of them. And it's just really warmed me up that that's my family. And I just wanted to be able to really show the strength and resiliency to live openly and proudly in a country which has no really rights, where LGBTQ people do not have rights whatsoever. I mean, they're still fighting just to be able to identify themselves as who they really are. So, and to go back to the US, I was lucky enough one of my biggest supporters of my Peruvian films was this, which she's become now a national renowned trans Latina activist, Bambi Salcedo, who I know now for about 7 years. I talked her into allowing me to film her about her life and her work, and which is the film that you saw here 3 years ago called Transvisible. And I'm so proud to say that Bambi's become like all the dreams and desires that she talked about in her film are becoming true. She started her own nonprofit in February. She's one of the
Coalition,
first. Yeah, the Coalición Translatina Coalition. Is one of the first trans-led organizations of that kind, run by a trans Latina woman for trans Latina women in LA. So I can't say enough about her.
Definitely.
So
didn't they just open a center up also?
Yeah, like in February.
In February,
yes, yeah. Right.
And I think that was one of the first centers that specifically serves trans people, right? Like it was basically led by Translatina Coalition. So that was a really awesome, great thing to hear about. Okay, what's the next question? How did you meet Zoey? What made you decide to focus on her story? How did you find out about her?
Well, she came to the premiere of my screening of Transvisible in 2013. They were actually Bambi's guests.
Wow.
So, but at the time, Zoey was 12, and I did not even imagine that they would, I would be making a film about a trans teen. I had seen already their advantages and the pitfalls of becoming a public person by watching Bambi, how she navigated that a new experience. And when you put yourself out there, they're like sling and arrows that come sometimes from outside the community, but also from within the community. But I know, Bambi's a warrior. She could take anything, but I didn't think that Ophelia and Zoey, being so young, that she would be able to do that. But luckily, they had already done some PSAs, and when I told Ophelia, well, this will be just a part of your advocacy, and she just agreed to do the film, and that's how, and then I followed them for a whole year before I started editing, yeah.
Wow. And I guess going off of that, talk about your relationship with Zoey's family. How long did you already said that. Did you film them for a year, about a year?
Yes, from a month before she turned 13 and a month after she turned 14.
Did your relationship with the family members evolve over the course of the filming? Did y'all get closer?
Yeah. I mean, they're my intentional family for, all purposes. I mean, I spent Christmases with them. We just had a birthday with them, and that's why I'm sharing that loss that we had today. It's like family, like any other family. There's a lot of highs and lows, and I'm happy to be able to be there to support them, to be like a big uncle for Zoey, and support for Ophelia when she needs it. And I mean, they're like family now. Yeah, definitely.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Yes. what particular constraints were involved in telling the story of a teenager versus telling the story of an adult?
Well, like I mentioned to you before, I knew about the pitfalls of being in the public eye. I think, you have to be really strong to be able to navigate that. And even though, Zoe is very confident and sometimes I'm filtered, sometimes that can come back to bite you. And I always tell people, remember, she's only a 15-year-old. She's 15 right now. She's going to be 16 in a couple of months. But she's 15. She's still growing. She's still evolving. But she has this platform, to talk about her life, to talk about issues, that are concerned to her. It could be beauty. It could be suicide. It could be bullying. And we have to see it through her lens and not try to. I think I find in the community, especially for older women, sometimes they're projecting on her, some kind of, role model status that she has to be the perfect little girl and all of that. And she's a teenager and she has her tantrums like anybody and she has her strengths. And I'm always defending her because I heard things that shouldn't be said about a teenager ever. I don't care what public persona or private persona that you have. And I think that's always something to be very, considerate and respectful of as a filmmaker towards your subjects. Yeah.
Right. What surprised you about the way Zoe's story unfolded?
Well, I think I was really blessed and privileged to see a lot of firsts in that year that I was filming. I loved her happiness when she got that prescription.
Right.
Going with them to New York. First time that Zoe was in a plane. First time that she was out of California. All those things were just really magical to be able to capture and document, and just being with the family and getting to know Letty and Ophelia. And now the grandma came from Mexico to live with them, so she's part of the whole very strong female-centric family. And, and that's something I gravitate towards. So,
awesome. Yeah. Tell us more about your decision to use Zoe's artwork in framing the film.
Oh, that was a no-brainer. At the time I came into the picture, Zoe had hiatus from drawing. There was the main picture that I used with the whole family, with Dante and Barney the cat, was still in the living room, but it was hidden behind other things, And I said, why are you hiding this beautiful drawing? And I said, oh, so he doesn't like, to look at those drawings. And I said, and I didn't understand why. Right. And Ophelia, of course, she said, but I have them all hidden somewhere. That Zoe had been drawing since she was a little girl, because that used to be her only outlet, when she didn't have any friends and she would come home or stay home from school, she would draw. And she would draw a lot. Dark stuff, nice stuff, the way she wanted to perceive herself, with pink hair, with curls, as a princess and all of that. And so I just took a gander to all the drawings that she had, and I took the ones that told the story about that specific moments in her life. Because I think she really drew some facial expressions and situations that were, for a little kid, I don't know how old she was at the time, maybe 10 or 11, she was so perceptive of, creating the nuances of the facial expressions and the dynamics in that director-mom, meeting, and it was just like, I'm always so in awe of her. Luckily to say, we were there last week, and she started to draw again because she stopped for a little bit because it reminded her of, bad times, like she said. And she's drawing again. She writes, she sings, she dances. She's like a, all around.
And I guess that this was my last question. How is Zoey doing now?
Well, you know, Zoe is, she's a survivor. She's a trooper. She's multifaceted. I think she can be whoever she wants to be. And right now she's a sophomore in high school. She has her challenges. There are things that she likes that she dislikes. I mean, at that age, she's already dealing with relationships, but she's very strong. I mean, she has, you know, 2 strong women that she can rely on, her mom and her sister. And she surprises me constantly, you know, because you think she's going to be really like docile and girly, and she's not. She's very feisty and, you know, unfiltered and strong. And she's just an amazing, amazing girl. I really, really, I think I was gonna say before, you know, like Patrice was mentioning, they're gonna show Tangerine, and
Right.
and you'll get to meet Maya Taylor.
Taylor.
And you know, actually, Zoe reminds me a lot of Maya when I met Maya when she was 19, and I hope she continues to be as strong and assertive and confident, and she has these aspirations to become a filmmaker or an actress or whatever it is, because I saw that in Maya, and I see the same star quality in Zoe.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess we'll open up for Q&A.
Does the film get shown in schools, though? That's my question. Are there schools that are brave enough to do this? Or is the film usually shown in like school support groups or community groups? I'm just wondering about where it has been able to circulate.
Oh, thanks for your question. Well, so far it's been shown in only 2 high schools. And I was not there. It was actually Ophelia and Zoe. And one was at a local high school in Downey. And apparently everything went well. People were very supportive. But personally, I've been showing it more in like university settings, organizations, and of course the festival, because the film is still going on very strongly in the festival circuit. Which usually brings the choir. You know, it's like, you know, LGBTQ people who want to see themselves being represented on screen. But the most eye-opening experience that I had, and I was telling Abby about it, was my screening in Peru. In Peru, I showed it in February to a very mixed audience, activists, lots of parents, people who never heard of, you know, trans before, and especially to see a supportive parent, a parent who's proud of having a transgender, you know, daughter. And the audience's questions were very mixed. They did not know that kids that age could possibly even know what their gender is, which can happen here as well. You don't have to go all the way to Peru to find that kind of a questioning. But I just reminded people that there are trans women in Peru that were in the audience, and there were children as well, but they just couldn't come out. And of course, they wouldn't be able to tell their parents because it was just like something you don't do, because there's no societal support, there's no psychological support. In Peru, if a kid starts even showing some evidence of being effeminate or tomboyish, first thing they do is going to a therapist. Conversion therapy is very popular in Peru. And so I understand that parents who want to be supportive probably are just so petrified to even come out and speak a word to their families, to their priests, to anybody. And they were like, yeah, you're probably right, you know. So it was an eye-opening experience for them. And I've been invited back in June to bring the film, and hopefully to create more situations where we can keep talking about this and having more parents being brave enough, because that's what you will have to be, brave enough to come out with their kid and say, this is who my child is, and I'm proud of them, and I'm supporting them no matter what. Yeah.
Was there a reason why her brother was never shown during the film?
Yes, you're very observant of you. The brother, and I have permission from Ophelia to talk about the brother briefly. The brother actually has a mental condition, and even though he's very supportive of Zoe, he was not instrumental in her, growing up, because he had his own issues that had nothing to do with she being raised or she being who she is right now. But he's very supportive, but he's been in and out of institutions for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's another story. That's a story from another film. Yeah.
Hi. So based on everything that you've experienced with this film and also just within the community, what do you foresee for the LGBT community within the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh my God. Are you asking me that today? Have you been on Facebook today?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I hope, that this storm will calm itself down and we will continue to resist and vote different people into office, and that parents will continue to stand up for their kids, and that the communities will stand up for their kids by voting, for kids' rights. Because what's happening right now is basically infringing on the most basic human rights, which is the right to health care, the right to go to the bathroom that you're supposed to go to, and the right just to exist. And that's one of the things that I feel really privileged that I have this film that gives me the platform to continue to advocate for the people that are not sitting here with me, advocate for all those trans women of color who are being murdered. I mean, there have been already 8 murders this year that we know of, for all those gender nonconforming kids who are just can't come out, even to themselves because of the fear of retaliation. And I think, obviously, to advocate for Zoe, because I know her and I know she's always gonna be out there. She's never gonna be stealth or back into the closet. So I fear, like the same way that Ophelia fears for her safety, So yeah, like I said, I'm sorry that today I have a bleak answer to your question, but I think we just need to, like I said, and Ophelia says it in the film, you have to stand up, you have to step up, and you have to speak up and vote and just always be there for somebody who needs you, intersectionally, not just LGBTQ. It could be in the immigrant community, it could be the Muslim community, it could be the African American community. We all are really under siege right now. We need to be united.
In your travels, what do you think causes so much hatred towards these people?
So I do have, I'm a cisgender queer filmmaker. So I've lived my whole, probably about more of like 35 years as an out, proud gay man. And I can tell you that the main reason I think that people have the fear, because it's just fear, is ignorance and indifference. I see it when I go back to Peru. People claiming, oh, they have never heard of that. They never known anybody like that. And, I understand people are fearful to come out of the closet. That's fine, in a country like Peru. But here, there's no reason why you can claim that you are fearful of these people. That if they're sitting in the stall next to you in a bathroom, because you see them only as a stereotype or something that's being created by the media, not as people. I know these people. They're my friends. They're my chosen family. I know them as people. I don't even want to qualify them, because it's like I'm talking about some alien race. They're not. They're just like us. I always tell parents, Ophelia didn't do anything in her life to have a child like Zoe. So anybody who's a parent, who's in bearing years that can have a child, a dad or a mom, could have a child like Zoey or a trans boy or a gender nonconforming boy, and it's nothing that you did. It's just nature. It just came out like that. Or you can have a gay child, you can have a lesbian child, and that's nature. It happens to everyone. And nobody has a monopoly on these things. I mean, everything happens for a reason. And I think usually happens to families for them to learn something. But I think in general, for the people who feel like no one in their family has had this happen to them, or they don't know anyone, is because they just don't open their eyes, because we're all out there, I mean, you can tell by the media in the last 30 years how many we've seen gay and lesbian people everywhere. And then you find out that beyond that, there being more, because there's queer history, and trans people been in existence since forever. We just didn't know about it. We were ignorant. I was ignorant of it. And I had to learn by hanging out with people like Bambi and her friends, So it's out there the way we want to learn about science and health and all of those things, space and all of that. You can learn about gender as well. And you can learn about, by being interested, and wanting to be an all-around human being. Yeah. Thank you.
What can we do to make sure that this film gets shown in other cities? For instance, in my hometown, Santa Maria, it's a very conservative city, and I think that right now there is a big movement to support our immigrant and LGBT communities, especially in Santa Maria. And so I think that this would be a great film for us to show out there. And it's also, if we can have it in Spanish, I mean, that would be amazing. So what can we do to make sure that happens?
Where is Santa Maria? Is it nearby?
It's an hour north from here.
Oh, okay. Okay, because actually we are, I got a grant to show the film in Central Valley, and we're actually having our first screening in Bakersfield in May 17, which is actually the day of the anti-homophobia and transphobia around the world, International Day. Mm-hmm. And actually our hostess is going to be the Honorable and Remarkable Dolores Huerta, which I'm so proud of that. She has met Zoey and Ophelia, and she loves them, and she just wanted to be there. And then we're going to show it in Merced, and then we're going to show it in Fresno. So we can talk after the Q&A, and we can see how we can bring the film to your community. And we're more than happy. And those 3 screenings, we're going to have Ophelia and Zoey come to us, because I think it's important for them to interact with them. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
And I was curious if you had time constraint on how long the film could be, whether there's a director's cut. And I just wondered how you edited the film. Were there scenes that you wanted to put in and couldn't put in? Just curious about your filmmaking process.
Okay, thanks for that question. Well, I mean, my premise was from the very beginning, because I knew I was dealing with people who have their own lives, and I thought that having a camera there was intrusive, and I found that actually after I did the work for the whole year, how intrusive I was. But always very respectful, of course, of the things that didn't want to have documented. So from the very beginning, I told them I was going to make the film in a year span. And like I said, I didn't know, like I told Abby, I didn't know what was going to happen that year. I didn't know about the hormones. I didn't know about she becoming the commercial, she going to New York. Those things were like not even so it was just a miracle of a year where, someone who's 13 went through. I mean, can you imagine? I never went through when I was 13. I think I was just trying to get over my pimples. So I was, I think I was just really focused on that time span because I wanted to make the film topical, you know, because as you saw, Zoey grows from being the fat little girl into this beautiful young woman in such a, you know, in a span of 1 year. And I thought that was magical, that we will never be able to capture that part of her life, you know. And so that was the whole year of filming. Then it took almost a year to get the funding to do the editing. The editing was done by this wonderful man in Woodland Hills, Andrew Kimeri. And he basically just told me, Dante, I don't care if you have money or not, but I want to do this film. Because he just had a little daughter, and he said, like I was telling you before, you know, your friend next to you, he said, my daughter could turn to be a lesbian or transgender, and I want parents to know, and now I know as a father, that they need to love their kids no matter what. And one thing that it was, and I was telling Abby during our break on the green room, that it's hard to put funding for a film of this kind because because it's, you know, I'm gonna be honest, it's because it's a Latino queer family and there's really no infrastructure for it, you know. And I really wanted to make a film that celebrated them. And I think I was able to, you know, with my enthusiasm and passion, to get people involved in the film, like Andrew. And we worked a little piecemeal when he didn't have a job, because he works at Google and Microsoft and all editing stuff. We would do it sometimes online, and we spent like very little time together, but he got me. He got the spirit that I wanted to imbue onto the film, and he loved the family, and I think that's the thing that really, you know, puts the ribbon around the film, is that we all really love what we were doing. I thought it was something that was gonna mean something to us in the long run.
Thank you so much again, Dante. This was amazing. Thank you, everybody.